information on prevention, tools for a healthy lifestyle. Make little changes to be the best you. It's all here. A podcast empowering, informing, and motivating Bermuda to live well. Bermuda Health-Abets. Everything from A to Z on healthy living. Brought to you by the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health in collaboration with local health partners.
Welcome to an episode of Bermuda Health-Abets, a podcast where we discuss everything from A to Z on healthy living with a mission of empowering, informing, and motivating Bermuda residents to live well. I am your host today, Yosifia Spence. I'm the public health educator with the Health Promotion and Wellness Office at the Department of Health. And I want to welcome our audience, and I want to welcome our two guests today, Anubhuti and Natasha, and they will introduce themselves and perhaps give correct pronunciation to their names because I may have botched it up a little bit. But thank you so much for coming on, and thanks so much for our listeners for tuning in today. Natasha, can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit more about you and your background?
Good day, all. My name is Natasha Rayner. I am a speech-language pathologist with Department of Health. I've been a speech-language pathologist for 19 years. My recent position in the Department of Health is with the early intervention team. And I studied in the United States at Alabama A&M, received my master's, and I also have a bachelor's in education and psychology.
Thank you so much.
Fun fact about myself, I am a crafter, and I have an Instagram page, Paper Trail.
Oh, really? That's really cool. I feel like I can tell you're creative by your earrings. Just for our listeners, she's wearing like these owl earrings, and they're so cute though.
Straight out of Germany.
Anu, can you please introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your background?
Good day, everyone. My name is Anubhuti Nagar, and I am a dual bachelor's holder in audiology and speech-language pathology. I'm a gold medalist in Masters of Speech-Language Pathology, and I also hold a postgrad diploma in early intervention. I have been a speech-language pathologist for almost 8 years now.
Okay.
And I've lived and worked in 4 countries so far.
Oh, wow. 4 countries? Do you mind sharing with us those countries?
In Southeast Asia, Middle East, and North Atlantic region here.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay, so you've been around. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today. And our topic today for our audience is From First Sounds to First Words. Let's talk why early intervention matters with speech-language pathologist. So this is why we have our guest on today. And I'm going to get right into our discussion. So what is speech-language pathology?
Speech-language pathology is a beautiful amalgamation of neuroscience, linguistics, child development, human development, psychology, and arts and science all together, which helps us study how communication develops right from birth all the way to the end of life.
Oh, wow.
We don't just restrict ourselves to communication, but we also kind of cover and evaluate the feeding and the swallowing development in babies and all the way to adult life.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. It's so comprehensive. And did you want to add anything to that, Natasha? So what are the most common... What can you briefly explain about early intervention in speech and language pathology and what that involves? Because you've just given us a background kind of about what speech-language pathology is. It sounds so comprehensive in that you must be highly collaborative when it comes to your work. But what can you briefly explain about early intervention, since that's our focus for today?
Yes, correct. So we are highly involved with other agencies, starting with the hospital nurses, the pediatricians, occupational therapists, physiotherapists. We may have the audiologists on hand as well. Dental's involved sometimes. So we have a collaborative group of people. With early intervention, we generally work with the families, maybe the nursery schools and the teachers, and any of the other services that they may be receiving if they need to. So early intervention starts off at birth. If they're having some complications at birth, they will generally come in and have a screening done if they're being referred for what may look like they're not developing typically for a child their age. If they're born with some complications, typically if they're a preemie, we would get a referral immediately for just looking at like maybe some feeding and swallowing initially, and then we look at some of their cognitive development as time goes on to see if they're progressing with their development for speech and language. And then we will often go into like the screening process, having a look at where they're at when the parents or family bring them in. And from that, we progress on to maybe further assessment, some diagnostic treatment if the child's not able to withstand a screening process. Lots of what we do is based around play. We do lots of play. We like to educate parents on, just some of the basic skills of promoting language for a child, right? So if it means that you're reading while they're in utero, like we'd love to do a segment on, helping moms before they have the baby so that they know what to expect once they have the baby. So that's our part of early intervention as well. We haven't tapped into it yet, but we're looking to perhaps do something like that moving forward, just to boost up the program, to really make it feel like an early intervention program here with us at Department of Health. So yeah, we can start there even. What does literacy look like? We're reading, we're talking, we're showing that love before they even have the baby. And then once they have them, what types of things could you look at in terms of, promoting language? It's the eye contact at birth. Babies like faces. Are we using some of that motherese, ooh, the oohs and the ahs? Are they responding to it? And there's a clear-cut indicators also if the child's not really responding to some of those things. We might want to check with our pediatrician. My baby's not really responding to my voice. He's not locating. Okay, well, is his hearing affected? They should have had a newborn hearing screening. So it starts really early with those little small things. And then we move right along into, are they babbling? Are they cooing? Are they, responding differently with their eyes, with their smiles? All of those things that you see in babies. And people love to, approach a baby and get the reaction from them. And it progresses into the infant to toddler. Are they now starting to, use point with gestures? Are they, starting to use single words or even approximate single words like baba for bottle or duh for dog, and that progresses on and on until they're able to start saying some single words, some phrases, some sentences, responding to questions. Can they follow one-step directions? Do they understand if you're using concepts like under the table, on top of the table? So it's a very broad major. We have such in-depth things that we can take a look at when it comes down to early intervention before they become school age. I know you want to add to that?
I think the most important part that you mentioned here is the fact that it's important to look at all these signs so early on. Like, we may think that when it comes to talking, we only need to start focusing on when the child is like 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
And they start talking in sentences, and if they're not talking clearly, then maybe we should go reach out to some professional. But
it's before that.
It's way before that. Right from day one of life. It's because that's how language is. It's so dynamic, it's so fluid, and it starts from day one of life.
You even talked about earlier, you said something about like the swallowing, right? When it comes to when you have like premature babies or anything like that, and that being something that you would kind of deal with as well as a speech language pathologist. It's just so interesting because from the just the wording, it's just seems like you're talking about like language and speaking, and so I think that's why a lot of us might jump to the stage where they're actually talking, or someone they said their first word, right? But a few weeks back we had we had OTPT on, and they talked about the response and some of those things that are expected for early intervention, and what you could, what might be indicators that something might be going on. And you talked about even that response to mom's face. Are they cooing? Are they so it's just so interesting, because, we think about babies and we don't think much, because we just think, oh, this is a baby. They're not really doing much. But it's so much happening there. So what are some other components that you would be involved in? Like you said, feeding as well? Okay.
I think the point that you mentioned here is very important, that we do look into so many areas, and the reason we do that is also because language development is directly proportional to the brain weight and the specialization and maturation of the brain areas, which happens in the first years of life. So as speech language pathologists, when we talk about language, we don't just restrict to language. We look into the speech, which is the clarity or the pronunciation of letters and sounds. We look into the understanding of language, the expression of language. We look into the social communication of children. We also look into play skills, which kind of overlap with what occupational therapists do as well. We also look into the fluency of speech, the voice, the quality of voice, and the feeding and swallowing. So almost like 7 areas is what we pay attention to when a child walks through our doors.
I feel like y'all almost sold me on becoming like a speech language pathologist or something.
We are detectives. That's what you can call us.
Detectives, speech detectives.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
You wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I do want to add. I'm not sure if I heard Anu mention the hearing part as well. So we do definitely focus on some of the hearing children with hearing loss, and that's also an indicator of articulation if they're having ear infections. We need to make referrals or help parents make referrals to have their hearing assessed as well. And if a child is born with the hearing loss, and then the further investigation to how we're going to rectify it, whether it be with hearing aids or other methods of being able to provide hearing for that child, then we can interact and be able to provide some support for those families as well. Did we mention multilingual families as well?
Hearing as in providing the rehab support to the hearing and working collaboratively with the audiologist, because they are the ones who assess, but then when it comes to rehabilitation after getting the amplification devices is where we come into play. And then bilingualism and multilingualism, Natasha, is a really important thing that we also look into, because most of the world is bilingual, and we do have a lot of families who want to respect and honor their heritage language while introducing some other language. And then if for some reason you have a child with language delays, or even if you don't have a child with language delays but want to introduce more than one language, we definitely help out the families in their journey.
Super interesting. Because I was raised bilingual. Like, I speak Hebrew as well, but I wanted to teach my daughter, and I never actually did. And I feel like something like that would have been helpful, because I wanted to hold on to that piece of my background, but I never taught her. But I think that would have been something that would have been beneficial. And I remember when my youngest sibling was born, actually, she's hearing impaired. And when they got the diagnosis in the hospital, because the doctors were saying, oh, she's not responding, and so in thinking about all of these things that came into play right after my mom found out, and she went to an integrated school, actually, but she learned sign language, and she was born because her cochlea was underdeveloped. So it really, like, a hearing aid wasn't really that beneficial to her, and she didn't really like wearing it because it felt like it was uncomfortable in terms of how loud the sounds were, because she couldn't identify what those sounds were. And so, interestingly, I think she eventually did get a cochlea implant. But before all of that, my sister, although she couldn't pronounce everything, she would say words, and obviously she's an amazing lip reader. Like, so you having a conversation and you think she knows everything you've said, right? So just thinking about how this has been a part of my life without thinking about who are those specialists that have actually been, integral, and even just us learning how to communicate with our younger sisters. So we did learn sign language as well. I'm a lot rusty, and I don't speak American Sign Language. I actually speak Israeli Sign Language. But yes, so very interesting. Honestly, I could sit here and talk about this all day.
You could too.
But what are some of the most common signs that a child might need speech and language support early on? I know you talked about preemies, but just in terms of what are some of the most common signs?
Okay, so we have the newborn, and you're giggling and having fun with your newborn, and you're noticing, like you said, they're not responding, perhaps. They might have an ear infection and or have some hearing issues. First step could be we can go to the audiologist. They should have had that test right out of the hospital. But if that comes back clear, okay, well, let's see what else is going on. Are they responding to noises in their environment? Are they able to even make eye contact, to even see your lips, to model words? Okay, that's not happening either. Okay, well, then let's take a look and see further. Are they vocalizing? Are they even making noises?
Right.
So you want to take a look from the start of it. Are they making some vocalizations? Are they cooing? Are they babbling? Are they even just feeling their way around their environment, or are they just sitting still? If they're really not functioning, then that's when we take them to the pediatrician and we find out some other things might be happening there.
Okay.
We can take a look at, basically it starts off, and from my experience, where the child is just not making any vocals, they're not progressing past a certain space in their ability to understand what's being said to them, and then they're not responding accordingly. So we have kids that have that experience. They're just running free, they're just doing what they know to do, they're surviving on their environment, they're not really watching their peers or their older siblings or their parents are doing everything for them, so they're not giving them an opportunity to even progress either, right? So those are some signs that, you might want to find out, is my child supposed to be doing ABCD by now? They should be doing some things, right? They should be playing with toys appropriately by, so each age range has an appropriateness to how they play. So
Right.
the babies, you can buy them this big grand old toy, they'll play with the box. Okay,
Right.
cool. Are they putting things in the box, taking things out of the box? Are they banging the box? Have they made something out of that box? Is it an instrument now? So some of these things that you just take a look at the progression of how these skills develop, right? We have checklists. You can also
Okay.
take a look at these checklists and see, is my child doing this? And it's a range, right? So from birth to perhaps 12 months, are they doing a range of these things? And it probably should be 6 months, and then from 6 to 12 months, are they doing a bunch of these things? And if they're not, that's a red flag.
Okay. Is that
Definitely.
something that parents, like that type of information, parents will have access to that? Or is that's something that you would get through like your pediatrician? Like how would you know
so our
that those red flags are red flags?
So usually you should be going to your pediatrician in the first 6 months of life. I want to say it's monthly, and I could be totally wrong about that, and it could have changed, but you generally go for your checkups, and they can see for themselves if your child is doing. They'll most likely ask you, and it's very important for parents to be honest.
Like, are they doing this? Are they doing that?
Yeah, they
that
might say,
type of thing.
Are they feeding themselves? Are they bringing food to their mouth? That's
Okay.
a clear-cut indicator that, something might not be right for this age range, right?
Okay.
Are they babbling? Are they, like I said, following directions, one-step directions? Get your shoes. Bring mommy your bowl. Those types of things. If they're not responding to and they're walking the opposite direction and or bring you something different, then we might need to work on some of those things, right? Like the vocabulary for naming simple common objects in the environment. Generally, the pediatrician is able to tell you that some things are not developing maybe as fast as they should be for the child's age, and or they will definitely ask you some of those questions. Also, when a child is, I guess, entering nursery, some of the teachers might say they're not doing this. And when you compare them to their peers, they may not be able to do some of the things. So they will reach out to places like child development and or the pediatrician once again. We often get the referrals from the pediatrician,
Okay.
child development, and parents can also self-refer themselves.
Okay.
So if they want, they can always give us a call, find the best person to contact in our department to make that referral. Generally, it would be myself, my supervisor, and yeah.
Okay.
It's easy enough to get that information. We have resources out there, though, that
Right.
are not actually as easily able to find if somebody
Right.
doesn't guide you. The internet is a monster, right?
And you
It
don't
is a
want
lot.
parents to go like just searching, and then like, because I think that also a thought about it is, yes, there is an aspect where there are certain expectations for development,
Correct.
but sometimes, every child is their own, and, their development could just be different, and not that that it's actually a red flag. And I know sometimes, especially as parents, we can kind of like not overreact, but like be nervous, so we thinking that there's something wrong.
Yeah. So
Right.
I know, for instance, we have a lot of parents who are highly academic based thought process for their child, right? We're not academic based, we're more language based. So they skip stages in their child's development because they want them to know the letters, numbers, shapes, colors, all of that so soon. When there's other things that they can learn, and or you can learn those same concepts through exposure, not mastery for such a young age. You can do, and everything's done through play.
That's
or your
interesting.
daily activity, right? You're brushing your teeth, that's an up and down motion, or round and round. So you're teaching 4 concepts or 3 concepts in one go. We're putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush. We're putting it inside our mouth. So all those target words there, you're teaching your child from day to day. It's repetitious because you do it every day.
Right.
So this is why I say use your daily activities to help teach concepts, right? You can teach color. Get your blue shirt today. That's teaching blue without drilling blue with a flashcard or games on an iPad.
Or even a TV,
or
like
the-
little
yeah.
TV show. I love that you said, what's interesting is that our OTPT said the same thing. Play, play, play,
Yeah.
play.
It's so
Play
imperative,
is
right?
the occupation for children. So
Yes.
using that for their development.
And what we're trying to develop as a team is to show parents some of these skills, right? Not all parents know to do this. And it's amazing to sit and watch a parent learn how to play with a child. The basics of a game can turn so complex for a parent because they're overthinking it, like you had just mentioned, right? When something as simple as building blocks, we want to follow the child's lead. If they knock the blocks down, use that exaggerated, expression. Oh, you knocked the blocks down. Let's build them back up. And you can do motions and actions to show them and help them, right? Not all children are able to, but this is where us as adults and parents need to show them how to. It's all a learned activity from day to day. I say 5 to 7 minutes each evening before dinner. Give a couple more minutes after dinner. A couple more minutes before bed. Bedtime and bath time are like perfect times to teach concepts. Yeah, from a very young age. Body parts, you can do body parts from infancy, right? Ooh,
Right.
Let's get your ears. Let's wash behind your neck. So yeah, it starts from the very beginning.
Wow. Yeah, because they see those videos on social media where like they have the little tiny baby reading, and I just recently saw this one. This baby didn't even look a year, and they were like, A is for, and the child was like giving different items that matched the letter, but now what else in between that, again, like you said, may have been missed because a lot of that academic component is being drilled, but play is really important for children.
I mean,
Yeah,
We
wow.
want to make it all functional, right?
Right.
Play, we all emphasize on play because that's the most functional thing, and that through that you can learn so many skills. And as Natasha gave all the examples, when parents actually spend time playing with their children, they will be able to figure out whether my child is actually doing it or not. Because sometimes you walk to the doctor's office and they ask like, "Oh, is the baby doing that?" They might not really
No, because they
know
haven't.
about that. And they'll be like, maybe, yeah, kind of. But that's where the whole role of being able to identify the red flags and everything else comes into play. So like reading, the academic reading that you gave an example of, that is something that everybody wants. We all want our kids to be beautiful readers and be successful in their academic life, but in the first year of life, for example, they only need to know the functionality of everything around them. Like, if they only know how to say colors, numbers, and shapes, how are they going to express if they're hungry or thirsty? If the only word they know are black square. You can't say black square if you want food or if you want water to drink.
Oh, wow. Wow. So how early is too early to intervene? Or is there even a such thing as like...
It's never too early to intervene. When in doubt, just reach out. And also depends on various conditions. Like sometimes you have conditions that can be detected in the womb, and we get involved with the families
early
right
from the pregnancy?
Like cleft lip and palate, you can easily detect it in womb, at least cleft lip, and then we get involved in the counseling part from early on and are there with the family once the baby is born as well. So for such babies, day one of life, you're there providing support in terms of feeding, latching, and trying to help them navigate that journey. And then sometimes babies are born with tongue ties and lip ties that can affect their latching and feeding skills too. And not just that, but it can affect their overall bodily processes as well. So all of those can be identified from early on, and then SLPs get involved along with the lactation consultant in this journey and support the family.
So it's never too early to get involved.
Never too early. Like even if you take examples of hearing loss, we are usually the timeline of 036 is followed. So like by 6 months you have to habilitate a child, which means provide amplification device if needed. So by the time the child is 6 months old, you know that they have maybe a kind of loss that needs to be given amplification devices for, but that whole journey starts from day one of life, or in the first week of life, I should say. So we are right there from early on. And again, like depending on where you are, it could be hospital-based speech language pathologist, it could be community-based speech language pathologist, and then as and when they move on to the nursery, daycare, and school settings, those speech language pathologists would be involved.
And you are, just because I didn't mention this earlier, you are public health based, right? So you're Department of Health speech language pathologist, and your main population is children. Is that correct?
birth to 4. Yeah, birth to 4.
Birth to 4?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Why is timing so critical in speech and language development? Is that is that a thing that would impact a young person?
Immensely. Language development is highly proportional to the brain development. And when I say brain development, I actually mean the maturation of brain, maturation of certain areas, and also the weight. The more the weight increases, because in the first year it triples in size. So that is also related to the neuronal connections. And when all the neurons, they start interacting amongst themselves, they create really beautiful, massive linguistic maps in the brain, and that helps you communicate. That helps you process all the information around you. And that is part of the process called neuroplasticity, which happens at a rapid fire speed in the first 3 years of life, which are critical for overall child development and even more for language development.
Okay. Did you want to add anything to that, Natasha?
I think Anu may have covered it all. Yeah, timing is very critical. If you don't know, just ask. If you feel like something's not right, just ask. It could be the slightest thing, like, and I'll just give a random example, but just say if your child's twitching their eye every day during a certain time, and it could be around feeding time, something's not right. Like just say something to your pediatrician, call somebody that might know somebody. Stay away from the internet a bit, because they can take you down a rabbit hole. But what she said is exactly right. If you don't get in within that first 3 years, that window kind of it closes up. It just makes it challenging for the child more so, because then they have a lot of catching up to do, and it makes therapy appear to be long term when it really didn't have to be.
So, I mean, is there a critical period where intervention is most effective then? Because I know you talked about 1 to 3 years being the most critical for that, development. So that time frame.
Yeah, we could get in as early as possible. That first 3 is most important. Like she said, you want to create those pathways and be effective early on.
Right.
Once they've already developed to be what they're going to be for a little bit longer in their development, meaning from the 3 years past that, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for us to navigate how we're going to redesign that pathway to be what it's supposed to be for a child that age. Because as they get older, the tasks become more complex. It's just going to get harder. The expectation of them to be able to perform for a child at 3, 4, and then progress into school age is going to make it a lot more challenging.
Oh, wow.
And it all has a scientific basis behind that, because what Natasha said just now is just what neuroplasticity is. That you lose, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you're born with certain neurons, and the connections actually develop through sensory learning and all of the experiences that a baby may have through movement, through people talking to them, through them seeing everything around them. So when those processes are not really being stimulated, the connections don't develop. And then if the connections don't develop, you're looking at slower progress. The graph the speed with which the graph actually goes up slows down.
Okay.
So
wow.
That's the reason why we need to intervene early and not wait and watch.
Are there long-term impacts of delayed intervention? I know you mentioned kind of it being a bit more difficult for intervention, but is there a long-term impact?
Various. I think the most easily relatable impacts are the ones that you see in school kids. The reading and writing skills, academic skills get impacted the most. You may be surprised that even skills like mathematics or skills that you need for even addition or division or all of those multiplication systems, for all those you need language. Because add 2 plus 2, you need to understand the meaning of add. You need to know what the number 2 represents, it means 2 objects, 2 counts. And then you should be able to, add on 2 plus 2, be able to count 2 and 2 actually give us 4 points. So all of that is language. You won't be able to do that if you don't have stronger linguistic basis. So academic skills are the biggest ones, and then the next is the executive functioning. They both are.
So what is executive functioning?
It is, in simple words, you can call it what an executive at any office does. Kind of readies everybody that, what a manager does. Tells us, yes, this week we have 5 things to do. And then they allocate resources to everybody. So for us to be able to achieve these 5 goals, we have these things for you. Now, let's do this all together and get the work done.
So basically how your brain is communicating to you.
Exactly.
To get things done.
Storing information, how you're able to store information and give it back later. A lot of it is your processing. Are you able to rationalize what's happening? And, are you able to problem solve? So it encompasses a pretty good bit of what we do from day to day. You probably just don't realize that you're using it, right? And when it's effective, because you can't function from task to task. You can't pull it together and make that connection. You talked about the impacts of delayed intervention. I just think that if we don't get in early enough, it makes it harder for whom needs to be involved later.
Right.
And are all parties willing to put all that work into bringing your child to where they need to be? It's a tough challenge. You know, parents need to be on board. There needs to be a whole team approach to being able to get this child ready for the next phase of their either social or academic life moving forward. Because communication is what we use, right, in a variety of ways to be able to function.
Right,
You mentioned in school age, all of this language that we talked about, top, bottom, in, out, all of that. They need all of those little basic concepts to be able to perform things like math, their language, their science, PE, right? The physical element of it as well.
Yes.
And a lot of it also, what I've learned in my last, maybe 5 years working with an occupational therapist, collaboratively, the body in itself needs to come together for language to be able to progress. So if your body's not strong, then it makes it harder for your brain to make connections for how you're going to produce your language as well. So that was something that I've learned over these last couple of years, and it's been very interesting to see the evolution of children's language from nothing to something, all because of the body.
Highly critical from what I'm hearing. Wow. What role do pediatricians, teachers, parents play in identifying early signs? And I feel like you've said a little bit of this, but is there any specific things, any other additional things that they play?
I think they all play a highly critical role and a very important role in a child's life. Parents are the first teachers, so they are the ones who actually have the ability to reach out to people and say hey, my child is 1 year old, but they're not using any words. When we know that by 1 year at least a child should be using 3 to 4 words. Like
mom, dad.
Kinship terms mainly, not colors, numbers, and shapes, but kinship terms like mommy, daddy, nana.
Dog, if you have a dog, if you have a pet.
Wawa, num num for food, something like that. But and then by 2 years, so we generally say follow the rule of 1, 2, 3. By 1 year, 1 word or whole phrases. By 2 years, 2 word phrases. By 3 years, 3 word sentences. That's what the child should be saying. And by 4 years, the child should be completely understandable, their speech should be clear. A stranger should be able to understand them. And by 3 years, a stranger should be able to understand 75% of what they're talking about. So the pediatricians, the parents, the teachers, they all have a huge responsibility in terms of identifying all of the red flags. And as Natasha was talking about, the play skills, so important. And you are able to only, look into that if you spend time with a child and the child doesn't spend time with the screens. We need human interaction. So
yeah, that's funny as well, because no, I mean, honestly, even the OT said if you speak to speech and language, oh gosh, if we talk about screen time, well, no, because screen time was one of our main points of discussion, and I'm like, I know that can impact. It must have some impact as well on speech and language, right? So it's just interesting. What are your thoughts on screen time? Something short. I know screen time could be like a whole conversation within itself.
And we just talked about it before we came, right? We're not against screen time. With today's times, we have families overseas, we have, siblings that may be traveling or whatever. And, so we're going to do video calls, right? That's the hype, right? Everybody's on a video call, everybody's on a live, everybody's on social media. And so we are constantly on our devices, right? But we want our parents to understand that while we're trying to help them to reduce screen time, we don't want them to physically take it away, but use it meaningfully. Are you sitting with your child and watching what they're watching? Are you reviewing the content before you're actually allowing them to watch? Right. It's not reciprocal, right? So the screen's talking, it's not talking back when you talk to it. It's just spitting out stuff to you, right? Yes, there are some programs that are saying, oh, do you see this? And, the kid can look left and right. I get that. But as parents, we want you to sit with your child. We want you to show them and talk to them about what it is that they are actually seeing, right? We have handouts on finding the appropriate content, so that's always a resource we can share. But
okay,
but we
I like
also,
that.
Yeah, we don't want you to take it away completely, but we want you to be mindful, and then also mindful of when and where you're actually using screen time,
and how much.
Use it
right?
how much is the big thing. Are you using it during mealtime? That for us is like a no, because we want you to build a relationship with food. So the brain shuts down, your appetite suppresses a bit. You're not eating. You're not tasting. You're not really having enjoyment with your food. So it makes, this is where we come up with, potential picky eaters or kids that just don't want to eat, because the screen is taking that enjoyment away. So we want people to have enjoyment with it as well, but just not at mealtime. We talk about it all the time in regards to schools having TVs on for learning devices. Not typical. We want to do music. We can do music, but we don't want our little people to be watching TV all day long.
Right. I agree. Yes.
The screen just really keeps their brains stimulated, making it harder for, like she said, that pathway to develop naturally with things that are more hands-on with movement, and creating a healthier pathway for development. Screen time is definitely a huge topic, and we will forever talk about it. We will find new and different research that's going to help support what we're saying as well. It's been a huge thing since, I want to say, I guess, COVID. Everybody's
because we were doing it so much more. And I honestly think that although, yes, okay, everyone's talking about it, like, people can get tired of it if they want to. But the issue is that this is what we're experiencing right now, right? And a lot of our children that came out of COVID, the small children and things like that, with us being confined to our homes all the time, parents trying to find things for children to do, completely understood, but we have to understand that there's an impact for everything that goes on around us.
Correct.
So recognizing what is this impact, and then what are some things that we can do to counteract some of the negatively related things when it comes to the impact from that new thing that might be developing or going on in our community. And right now, screen time is that's the conversation. So I definitely, I'm not, there's no judgment for parents or anything like that. It's a matter of, this is a conversation that we have, because then you'll have that information, and then you can take and do with that information what you'd like to do, but it's out there. Right? And we're having the conversation, and we're not ignoring it, because it is having an impact.
Yes.
And we're going we're not as not halfway to where we might be in reference to technology in the next 15 years or so, right? So it's worth looking at it right now and saying, okay, right? So, I mean, I know it's a controversial topic.
And there's a reason behind this whole conversation, because there's science behind why people are talking about screen time, because brain development is dependent on sensory learning. It's not just about language. It's about overall, bodily processes or functions. Like, we have different body systems, and then, for example, motor learning. Even the simple fact that, when you can't really learn how to modulate your voice if you are spending most of the time on the screens. So, like, we all talk differently with our grandparents compared to the way we talk to our friends. Now,
that's correct.
You can't expect a 2-year-old to learn that from an iPad. They need to see humans talking around them. They need to feel it. They need to experience that. And that can only happen when we have healthy limits around whatever we are doing with our babies.
Wow. Yeah, screen time, that's a big
it's a whole nother podcast.
Yes, of course. Honestly, actually, I told the OTs and PTs that I was going to bring y'all together, and we were going to have a whole discussion around screen time. So that's coming soon.
No problem. Yeah,
with that.
Right?
Yes. And then we can bring together some some of the research and information that is out there and share it with our listeners. So I think that would be a great opportunity to have that discussion, especially with a group of, diverse people with diverse backgrounds, because then you can give it from your different backgrounds as well. So I think that's going to be a very good discussion to have. I'm looking forward to that discussion as well. I might have to be your host for that one. How can parents advocate for early intervention services if they have concerns? Because I know you said something about parents can also self-refer. Is that the fact for Department of Health as well? Like, can they call you?
Correct. So they can directly call myself or our supervisor to refer themselves. What we basically would do is have a discussion with them on what challenges are they having, what issues are they seeing with their child, and then we can either provide some strategies and help them follow up with them. And then before we make a full-on referral, it could just be a slight adjustment, like turn the TV off or take the iPad away. It could just be something, or limit it. It could be something like, and I'll bring back the whole topic of screen time again, just because, we have lots of parents who have the LED lights in the bedroom, the screen time, and music and the iPads illuminating all night. So the child's not getting enough sleep, right? So then, therefore, they're cranky. They're not using their words, the words that they probably haven't produced, or the words they had and no longer using, because they're just agitated, right? Their brain's been overstimulated for far too long, and they didn't get any sleep. It could be something as slight as making an adjustment, right, to that. Or they're not eating well. We could just help them make adjustments to some of the things that they're pointing out to us before we can make a referral. But they are very welcome to call us, make a referral, and then we can go from there. Yeah, they'll get a screening and go from there, yeah.
Okay. What are the barriers that often delay access to early SLP intervention?
Lots. I think first would be the parental attitude. And not just parental attitude, but also the attitude of healthcare providers or professionals. A lot of people like to believe that a wait and watch approach is the best way. The child will grow out of it. But we like to believe that intervene early so that we are not pushing the child to navigate this whole journey by themselves. And then they get frustrated, everyone gets frustrated around them, and it's just a mess. So don't wait and watch.
Is that the case even for like teachers sometimes, if they're not informing parents of what's going on?
Parents, everyone, like, oh, don't worry, my cousin's so-and-so's child started talking at 5 years of age. Ma'am, that's a red flag.
Oh my goodness.
Also, just to add to that, traditionally here in Bermuda, we definitely go based on like Anu said, my cousin's sister didn't talk till she was 3. My oldest son didn't do this until they was 5. So we use a lot of that, right? I think the denial factor is what we're up against a lot. They'll grow out of it. They'll be okay. The number one thing we're hearing from other professionals is that they'll grow out of it. Some things they will not. Some things just need to be checked, hands down. They will not grow out of everything. It's not a pimple on the cheek that can heal and move away. This is definitely something that needs to be looked at. Some other barriers are like misconceptions that this won't cause them to have this. So if they have a tongue tie, their speech won't be affected. It'll improve on their own. No, some of it, may not. Some kids have tongue ties, and it may not necessarily have affected their speech as yet, but they may have had their feeding and swallowing affected. Their swallow may have been affected from it. So at some rate, something will be affected by it. They might have tight jaws, tight tongue, which makes it rigid for them to do other movements. Like, it's a whole trickle-down effect for the whole body. Like Anu said, it's, we're talking about functions of the body, right? It's a whole bodily thing. Communication is just one part of it. It's lots of things that are factors for it. So just not being in denial. That's one of them. The traditional thing.
Boys talk later than girls.
Girls, right?
That is,
Boys are busy. Girls are more chatty. doesn't have to be that
so
way.
all of those stereotypes can hinder like
people's perception
seeking
of
help.
what a red flag would look like. Oh, he does this at home, but meanwhile he's 8 hours at school and nobody's seeing any of the things that the family is saying that the child could do. So there's like some bullet points under the denial factor, and then sometimes it can happen that way. Children are doing some things at home that they're not doing at school, and vice versa, right? Teachers, I want to say there are some that are saying that they're doing things and they're probably really not, because we're not seeing progression. So that could be some challenges for us as well when we're looking at helping parents to refer. And then also, I think just another barrier, low intellect from parents as well. If they don't know how to refer. And then there's
like the awareness around it.
Then if they don't go to the pediatrician on a regular basis for checkups from a very young age, then they're missing things. It's not that it's they're in denial, they just don't know. It's just a lack of awareness to what they should know as a parent.
Wow, interesting.
And the reason we emphasize that is because there is science behind all this. Like if you speech is not just saying baba, dada, mama. It is like you need over 50 muscles to work to be able to say one sound. You need your lungs to be at full capacity to be able to give that breath support. You need almost over 20 cognitive processes for a child or even an individual to come up with one word or give a response. So everything is all connected, and that's why like wait and watch doesn't work, because some children may develop compensations, but do we really want to push a child to that level wherein they're compensating and they're just trying to be present in the moment despite all the challenges that they face in the body? Or do we want to intervene early and make sure they are set up for success?
Very, very interesting. And I think as well is you mentioned about the wait and watch thing. I guess as a parent and thinking about, okay, what are some things that I would do differently in the future, is thinking, well, it won't hurt that if there is something that I think is a red flag, to consult or talk to someone, and then you can assess whether or not I need further assistance. So I think that might be a helpful thing as a parent in thinking. And I know sometimes we're all so busy as parents and booking an appointment with a doctor and having to go to find phone numbers to call this person. That can be daunting. But just in knowing that, like, for instance, a lot of these services that we're talking about now is, you can call the Department of Health at 278-4900, and they can direct you to, you say, okay, this is the issue I'm having. I'm looking for a professional that can help me with that. They can direct you to someone that will be able to help you. And if it's not the right person, then that person can likely direct you to, to the correct person. So, yeah, and thinking about it that way.
And I think also as a community, what we're trying to create is community awareness of what this stuff looks like, right? So we go back to those barriers of not wanting people to tell you what's wrong with their child. Or you don't want the neighbor to say, Johnny's doing A, B, C, and D. They should probably be doing this, right? But what I wanted to bring a point to, hearing you say, like, parents making time for those appointments, is also bringing the community together to have the jobs to understand that people have young children, and they may need to offer some time up for their employees that have young children to meet these needs. There might be a session every week, maybe twice a week. We're asking parents to come out and join our parent connect group where we can teach them some things, or bring their child for services, right? That could be another barrier as well.
Supportive work environments are very important.
Work environment. We're finding lots of parents pushing us off into their nurseries to service children because they can't be there because of work. We never want work to always be their first priority. The child is the first priority if we're talking about language development.
Of course, but the main thing that the parents are a lot of times thinking about is being able to meet the basic needs for that child.
Correct.
And so if I don't work or I don't make my hours, then I won't have enough money for the rent, for the water, for the food. And so I think that that's a overall challenging thing with Bermuda and worldwide, really, right? But it always takes us back to what are those social determinants of health, because those are the things that will allow us to, take care of ourselves and actually do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. So it's interesting, and I think that's a larger discussion, right? But I think that's also a part of employee wellness, because when you think about it, if you create an environment that's supportive of your employees, their well-being will be, that will be more positive or healthier in that sense, right? Being worried about not being able to make doctor's appointments for your children, that's a part of your mental health, right? And obviously we can go all day
on
about this stuff.
I really agree with you. That's very important.
Yes.
Just getting just more employers to understand that it's not gonna just stop. The kids are coming rapid, and they have their things going on, and parents just need to be a little bit more, not a lot more involved in this section of their child's life, more than anything else.
And we say, honestly, this term, especially I've used this so much recently, this phrase, the children are our future, is that it's just so accurate in everything that we do, right? And, population growth is also very important right now because of the low birth rates that we've experienced. And I think even worldwide that a lot of places have experienced, right? So, in thinking about that, it's really that everything we do, even the smaller things, are contributing to our larger society and how it functions. So thinking about, okay, how does that affect me from a larger perspective? And I digress because I did take a little tangent on that one right there. What does a typical early intervention program look like for a toddler?
So I am in the learning stages of what a typical early intervention program looks like, hence why I would love to redesign what that looks like for Bermuda. We have a new who's actually worked in an early intervention center, so she has more input on what that actually looks like, and we're going to do our best to try and pull this off because we think it's important, right? We need to have a more collaborative approach, and we need to get to the parents way earlier than we have been. So I'm going to let her elaborate on what that actually looks like.
Okay.
I think the most important part is the involvement of parents. They are the first teachers. They have such a huge impact on the child's development, and I think the core component of an early intervention program, in air quotes, is the fact that parents need to be involved. Nobody can replace them. And how can we involve them and what we do with them? Like we work, we teach them how to connect, because again, the healthcare professional, or SLPs in this case, just act as a buffer between the child and the parent. We might be able to see something, and then we might be able to suggest, like, how about we try it the other way around? But then for us to see the results, and for the families to be actually see the results, they actually need to implement the things. So I think that's the most important role that we have, is to provide support to the families, act as a buffer between the child and the carer, and then show them the ways, teach them, coach them, model, and empower them with all the strategies that they can implement in their daily routine. Because we don't need anything specialized. Sometimes you don't even need toys to do the basic things. You can just use the stuff that you have in the house, and then provide strategies with how you can use the things that you already have in the house. Whether you have a house full of 100 toys, or whether you have a house with absolutely no toys, we can still do a whole lot of things with what you have in the house. And I think that is the most important role that we have in terms of creating more language-rich environment in a child's life.
Would you say that a typical program, I guess, is more geared or tailored towards your client then?
Yes, it is individualized. There's no
one general
one thing that fits everybody's department. No
one size fits all.
Absolutely not.
Can you share a story of a child who benefited specifically from early intervention? Significantly, from early intervention? No, I mean, obviously no names because, confidentiality, but yeah.
I think there will be many successful stories here.
So what we found is that, so let me just share this. Coming into early intervention, I had a different idea because I was in school-based first.
Okay.
So school-based children are already up walking, talking. They're doing a lot. We're kind of sort of doing therapy at school, not kind of sort of, but we're doing therapy at schools. The interaction with parents may be non-existent. It just looks different, right? More academic support for the teachers, delivering language differently. So I get into early intervention and I have babies. And I'm like,
that's a difference.
I haven't worked with a baby since grad school, and I'm already 6-7 years into my profession. And I'm like, babies, okay. So I have my own child relatively closer to the time I joined the intervention team. So I used her as an example of development, typical development, and what it looked like. And it was such a great experience because I could imitate and mimic what I was doing with her at home with some of the clients.
Okay.
So what I found was that we put a lot of work and repetition in the babies, and we sometimes don't see what we think is going to be an instant progression or reward towards some of the things that we're constantly putting in, banging our heads against the wall, like, what do I do next? What else can I do that's exciting? And the child's still not responding. And you're like, well, what else can I do? And then you just keep doing the same thing, and the same thing. And the child moves on to preschool. And you're feeling like, I didn't accomplish anything. I was lost with this child. And the child gets to preschool, and the parents are saying they can now do that puzzle. They can now say please. They can now tell me that they're hungry. They can now do some of the things that we have been implementing that whole entire time. So to talk about one specific child, I think it's just a range of children that we kind of put our hearts into their therapy, and the results come just a little bit later than we expect. But it's still progress, right? We heard some of the stories from the parents or the teachers, because it's so connected, right? Or the therapist, which would be our colleague, telling us, oh, they could do that now. And we're like, oh, we spent a whole year trying to get them to do this, and they didn't do it. So if I'm going to say that's the success behind it, that would be what it is for me, seeing them later on, being able to do some of the things that, we had worked so hard at between the ages of, like, say, 2 and 4.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's quite an emotional topic, to be honest, because we are quite emotional professionals. SOPs are like that. And we cry every single time the child comes up with the first word in the session. And let me tell you, all those moments are beautiful and they leave a lasting impact. So I think when you ask about the success stories, it's going to be really hard because
to pin down any specific one.
Like just last week, I had a session with one of the families, and then the baby actually said the very first word, and I was crying, the mom was crying, and we were like, okay, that's probably the end of session because we can't deal with any more emotional stuff in this session. But it was so joyful. It was the best thing ever.
Oh wow.
But those are, I think, it's hard to define success, but I think if I have to do it, it will be when the children take their very first, be it first word, be it first time they take turns in a game, or be the first time they actually call my name, where they're able to recognize, like, oh, you are Anu. There are very few kids who can say my whole name, but Anu is something that a lot of kids can say. So yeah, that makes me emotional too.
Wow, I love it, you guys. That's amazing just to hear. Like I can see that being, and obviously, like you said, a lot of times it's going to look developmental and it's going to be like a little further in the future, but it must be rewarding to be able to see some of those things that you're working towards come out of all of the work that you put into it.
Okay, I know. I do have a story. I do. This one I really want to share because OT and I work really hard with this kid. hard, and we were, like I said, banging our heads like, what else could we had checked off every box in regards to like assessing his skill level, and we were just, like I said, repetitiously doing some of the same things. And I actually saw this child one day with his dad, and dad opened up the door to the car, and he just started asking me all these questions. And I was like, wow, because honestly, we thought that he may have never talked. We didn't see how, our skills were going to transfer over. And he was actually asking me, well, where are you going? And who's at your house? And I was like dumbfounded. And we're only talking a year later after not seeing this child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a child who had kind of no words to now asking full-on sentence. That was sweet. That was sweet.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, it's amazing. I'm like so grateful to be able to hear your stories. Thank you so much for sharing. What kind of progress can families expect to see with consistent support?
It's a whole
You want to take that
spectrum.
one?
It's a whole spectrum. I think, as Natasha was talking about, sometimes the progress can be really hard to measure in real time, but we know for sure that it has long-lasting impact. So, but if I have to be specific around here, then with consistent support, we can definitely see the communication skills being evolving. Reduction in the gap of language age and chronological age. That's how we actually determine how severe the delays are. So that improved play skills and being more independent and functional little humans in the world.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, wow.
And then, setting them up for success in the academic life and in future, because you would be surprised to see how critical and how long-lasting the early interventions impact is. Like what happens in the younger age has direct correlation with what a person can do at 18, 19, 20, or 30 years of age.
Wow. This has been like such a robust discussion, and again, I feel like we're gonna have to have more discussion in the future when we look at speech and language, and early development. What advice would you give to parents who are unsure if their child's development is typical? And I know we kind of discussed some of this earlier, but what advice would you give?
First would be don't wait.
Don't wait.
Please don't wait and watch. Reach out to professionals. You have the world in your hands in terms of cell phones and iPads and laptops. If you went on Uncle Google's and tried to search, what should my 1-year-old be doing? What should my 18-month or 20-month-old baby should be doing? And you found that, maybe they're not really doing that. Don't hesitate in reaching out to professionals. You'll be happy to talk to you about what's right, what's wrong, and that will help reduce your anxiety as well, which is, I think, most important, because calm parent means regulated children as well. So please don't wait and don't hesitate to reach out to professionals.
Yeah, I could concur with that. I say just ask a lot of questions. They might seem like they're dumb questions, especially if you're a first-time parent, right? You have nothing to compare it to. So just ask as many questions as you can. Like, no question's a dumb question. All of us are here to help. The pediatrician, if that's your starting point, then that's fine. Ask for who he could refer you to. And like Anu said, just be there for your child and just don't wait.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I was gonna say you beat me to it. No question is really a dumb question, especially when it comes to your children, right? Because if you don't ask a question, then you won't get the answers, right?
Correct.
So what are some helpful resources or first steps for families starting this journey? You mentioned the pediatrician. What other helpful resources would we have in our community, specifically in Bermuda?
Well, child development is one of our first spaces as well. Generally, at birth, you get a little packet in the hospital that may have some information on it from child development, but that would generally be your first step to most of all of the services provided in early intervention. Like I said earlier, you can self-refer, but that would be where you can definitely start that journey. They have a variety of people there that can help, from the screeners. And if you're finding that your child is not progressing from earlier than 2, they will do a priority screening for your child. They have a program called Parent-Child Plus, which is actually geared towards the parents learning to do some of the developmental skills in the home or in the environment that they live or work in. And then we have the behavior therapist as well. So she's there to also help and support where you may have some challenges with your child. So it generally starts there, and they refer out to us, whether it be speech, occupational therapy, or physiotherapy, or counseling.
Okay, so that's child development?
Child development,
okay.
Yeah.
How can communities better support early intervention programs? Generally, just the Bermuda community.
We need all the help we can get, honestly, in regards to promoting great language, rich environments in the nurseries, in the schools. Allow us to come in and show you what that could look like. Let's have some parent-teacher conferences where you invite us in to help you
That's a good idea.
understand what this looks like.
And extended family members,
Yeah.
please support
Extended family
your
members.
families. Like if your son, your daughter, your cousin, your relative is coming to you and kind of trying to talk to you that they probably have some concerns regarding their child's development, don't brush them off. Just don't say like, oh, don't worry, your cousin started talking at 6 years or 4 years of age. That's not okay.
It's not okay anymore.
Just support them.
I'm just laughing because that's just such a Bermudian
It's so typical, right?
thing to do.
I think it's a worldwide
Sorry to
thing.
cut
And
you
I
off,
think-
Anu.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
but all the grandmas, grandpas, everybody. I have my own grandma who was like, why are you asking people to, reach out to you at so early age? But kids talk later as well. I was like, no, that's not okay. It's a red flag. She was like, oh, you study too much. So that's what I get from my grandma. So I'm pretty sure other people hear that from their family members as well. So
Culturally, we're known
Please.
for that, right? And I think a lot of families like to keep their things inside. Don't be afraid to come out and share with us
what
what you're
goes on in
feeling.
this house stays in this house.
Like we're beyond that. We want to be that community that helps, and we can only be that community that helps if you actually tell us what you need help with. And we may be speech language pathologists, but we have our fingertips on other resources where we can help. It may just be something as simple as starting off with a counseling session because you might have postpartum as a parent. And that quick fix as far as speaking to somebody, that's the first step to the quick fix. Speaking to somebody like a counselor about it, or your doctor yourself, right? To help you be that better parent. Because if you're not good with yourself, it's no way you can be great for your child. And I think that's the most important part right there. So.
Yeah, wow. So if you had one last thing that you would leave with our audience, because you've said so much, I have really enjoyed our discussion today. But if you had one last thing that you would want to leave with our audience, what would that be?
Talk to your babies. Love your babies. Yeah. Be there for your babies. If you see something, like Anu said, don't wait. That's the main thing for me.
Anu?
don't wait and watch is something that I live by, and that's what I would tell people. When in doubt, just reach out, please. We're happy to help.
Thank you so much for coming on today and having this conversation around early intervention when it comes to speech and language. And what I've taken away from this is how critical it is to the development of our young people. And so I want to thank you for, imparting knowledge on me today as well. And I always want to be open to learning how we can help our young people. So I want to thank you for sharing with our listeners today. Thank you for having a discussion with me. I want to thank our Bermuda Health-Abetters for tuning in to another episode of Bermuda Health-Abets. And if you're looking for more episodes of Bermuda Health-Abets, you can find us on Department of Health's Facebook at Department of Health Bermuda, or you can actually find us on our YouTube channel, which is Department of Health Bermuda as well. If you have any questions or topics of interest for Bermuda Health-Abets, you can call 278-4900, or you can email healthpromotion@gov.bm. Thank you so much for tuning in to an episode of Bermuda Health-Abets.
You have been listening to Bermuda Health-Abets. Please note, anything you heard on this podcast is not a substitute for visiting your healthcare provider. If you have a topic or want a question answered, please contact the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health by emailing healthpromotion@gov.bm or by calling 278-4900. Be sure to listen out for the next episode of Bermuda Health-Abets.